So not
Mhm.
every interest that I've ever had that I've pursued has come to fruition or become anything. And that for me is actually part of the journey. That's the glorious
Yeah.
part about it, right? Like many failures, many like, oh, I'm interested here, and then it fizzles out. And it's just not for you.
Yeah.
But following that sort of meandering path, who would have thought that working in a health clinic, as a case manager and home staging would come together to create something that transforms people's lives?
Welcome to The Ownership Game with Gary Montalvo. What would it take to get into the driver's seat of your life and leave your mark? The Ownership Game starts now.
Today we chat with my friend Danielle Woodhouse Johnson. You know how every once in a while you meet someone new, you get to talking, and then you shortly find yourself saying, wow, you've lived a very interesting life. Well, Danielle is definitely one of these people. Along with her many adventures, she's learned some really valuable lessons in ownership and treating everyone with dignity and respect. I'm really excited to introduce you to her today. Hi, my love. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you.
Hey, Gary, I'm excited to be here. Great seeing you.
So, for our listeners, you need to know that Danielle and I are friends. We spent quite a bit of time at Burning Man and preparing for Burning Man. We were both in a committee together, so we got to know each other really well. And this is the first time that we're seeing each other after Burning Man, so we're very, very excited to spend time together.
You look better rested, Gary.
Oh, I'm
You
sure.
look
I'm
fresh. You're not
sure. Yeah, I was
dusty.
gonna say what a shower does. Isn't that
You
amazing?
know?
I don't have an inch of dirt on me and fly
Yeah.
of dust. So I really wanted to talk to you because you are doing, first of all, you just have a fascinating background story in your journey, but you're doing some really beautiful work with a nonprofit that you've launched. And I was so moved and inspired by that in the work that you're doing there that I wanted to talk about that. But before you even go there, I think that I want to just your background story, right? Because you didn't just wake up one day and decide to launch a nonprofit on top of your busy life, on top of your kids and your marriage and your 9 to 5 and everything else you have going on, right? Um, but give us a little bit of your where did you grow up? What was your professional journey like starting out and just give us a little background story.
Little background. Okay. So I grew up in Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. And I'll start you off at my journey in Peace Corps. So after I graduated from University of Virginia, I studied Spanish and International Affairs. And I went to Dominican Republic and lived there for almost 3 years as a Peace Corps volunteer. So I was out in the sticks, like the Campo, like countryside, right? Like
Uh-huh.
a hole for a toilet, basically.
Wow.
And that experience was super transformative for me, in the sense that I got to, be a part of a community, uh, learn the language, learn about what was important to me and my value system, um, in terms of what brought happiness, right? Coming from the United States to a place where it's, not the tourist version of Dominican that you may think
Mhm.
of. It's something different. And, spending 3 years there, earning the same as the people that I lived with so that there was no difference really in the sense of our lifestyles and stuff like that, and really just being embedded. And that part for me just taught me a lot about my ideals, about what I
Mhm.
valued, about what was, what made life worth living, right? And so I come back from the Dominican and I worked on an HIV project there. That was during my time there, um, and worked with a lot of youth, and we taught other youth about how to prevent transmission and sort of around the island. So that was really great. And I came back and I worked at a public health clinic for 4 years, and I was a case manager, counselor, HIV tester, and I had a lot of clients coming in from different countries who had nothing basically, a lot of undocumented folks,
Mm,
people who didn't have health insurance, and they were looking for resources and to be connected into the community, just for help, right? And so I got to know those people in a very personal way. Our clinic was actually embedded in an apartment building. So one of the apartments was the clinic itself, and people would come in
mm,
for counseling and testing, and they, next door neighbors. So it was another community centered sort of environment.
mm,
And I had a couple of clients come in who needed furniture. So in these apartments, they would share spaces, and there may be four families in a single apartment. And they
mhm,
would use curtains and different things to divide the spaces to kind of create their own privacy, and do things that they had to do to be able to survive. And a couple of clients would come in and request furniture, so I'd have to reach out to people in the community. Do you have a couch? Do you have a chair? Do you have a bed? And the donations I would get from them when they'd bring things were atrocious, right? It was like
mhm,
trash. And it would make me so angry inside because I'd be like, just because this person doesn't have anything doesn't mean that they deserve your trash. Like
mm,
its table with the dog legs chewed, like the legs chewed by your dog, or a couch with like a spring sticking out where it's uncomfortable to sit on. And although people would accept the donations, it was communicating a message to them that you're not worth anything. Take whatever is given to you. You have no
yeah,
choice in the matter. And I knew these people's lives. I knew their kids. I knew their backstory, their history, sometimes coming from, incredible places to, I mean, and doing incredible things to coming to the United States and being humbled by their circumstances.
yeah,
So that was a seed for me, to start the Oasis Alliance, which is, because I haven't explained that yet, but the Oasis
yeah,
Alliance is an organization that creates space for trauma survivors. And by space, I mean physical spaces. So rooms, homes. We've recently done some commercial facilities where, folks come. Um, and these are people who have been through various types of trauma in their lives, be it homelessness, um, catastrophic medical illness, um, domestic violence situations, vet vets who suffer with PTSD, mental health issues, all kinds of people in all different walks of life, but they're getting a space, right? It's a transition time in their life, and that space has nothing in it. They don't have the resources to furnish it, they don't have the resources to make it home. And so they come to a place that really doesn't represent them and is, honestly just depressing to go into. And so that the time I spend at the clinic learning about how to make people feel important, how
mhm,
to make them feel like they're reflected, how to make them feel valued, really sort of was that initial seed to start the Oasis Alliance. And then, on the other side of the coin, I am an artist. I am a designer, an interior designer, home stager. I made jewelry and sold jewelry for a very long time. That started when I was in the Peace Corps using
mm,
materials and found materials in the environment, paint, art, any kind of art really. I'm just creative. And
yeah.
so I was doing home staging, and I don't know, Gary, do you know about home staging? Have you ever heard of it before?
For like, I know about it when there's like a rental or you're trying to sell a
Mhm.
unit and you come and you fill it up with like, we make it beautiful and then you walk in and you're like, I want to live here.
Exactly. Yes.
You're like, I'll take it with everything that's here, which
Mhm.
happens. Some
Mhm.
people do that.
So that magic that you see, that's marketing, right? Like
Mhm.
home stagers go in to a property they're trying to sell or rent and create they speak to the buyer that comes in the door and say, "You can have this lifestyle," right? So, it's really design it's light design because once the home is sold, of course, everything's taken out and it's reused in another home. But the goal is to communicate a lifestyle to the client that comes in the door. So, if you have a young bachelor coming in and he wants a nice condo in the city, you're going to put certain magazines on the table. You're going to
Mhm.
hang, a nice sport jacket in the bedroom. Um, You're gonna put a cocktail set on, on the table. Little things where you're saying, "This is the life that you want." You're aspiring to that
Mhm.
next phase. So, I did home staging for quite a while. I started as an intern and then moved up to a lead stager at one of the firms here out of DC, and those skills, enabled me to learn about communicating through home, aspirations for someone. And
Mm.
so, I've got the social work aspect of the clinic, and dealing with people that are at their lowest point. I've got design and sort of psychology, design psychology, and then married the 2 together into an organization where we can serve people, but also have some artistic outlet and also, help people to see themselves again and be confident again and come home to a place that they can like recharge in.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of a summary of
Whew.
how I got there.
There's so many things I want to unpack, but I want to
Okay.
go back. I want to go back to the Peace Corps because I'm placing myself in your shoes.
Mhm.
Because I want to just be first of all, I just want to really create because I think it got skipped over a little bit, but when you're in the Peace Corps, you just said it, like you are living with the people that you're serving. It's not
Mm,
like you are in a nice apartment in a different town and you're in an Airbnb type of setup and then you go
mhm.
in, like you are living with the people and you're earning the same salary that the locals earn. So you are like your resources are as limited as they are. And like when I started, I mean, I'm Dominican, so I know exactly what that means. And so when you said that, I literally go like,
Yeah.
what? What was that like for you? And I mean, I'm the first thing I'm present to is that takes a lot of courage, um, to be that young and be willing to take that risk and leave behind so much of your comfort and it's ironic because you're going to college to prepare yourself to have success and the things that come with success, but you almost like give all that up and go the opposite way and leave all your material things behind to be in service in this way. So I'm just really present to the selflessness and the leadership and also the courage to do that, especially for Americans, because Americans don't have a lot of experience with that level of poverty, that level of, we're like, oh, it's hard here, but I'm like, no, 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 no. Like you don't know hard. Like I'm like it can get worse. Like so, what was that like for you? And if you can kind of just talk about that experience a little bit, I think it would. I don't want to skip over that part.
It's nice to go back down memory lane with like this with you, around Peace Corps because it was a very formative, experience for me. So I didn't come from a lot in the States. Like, I mean,
Okay.
a single mom, grew up with a single mom. My father's incarcerated for much of my childhood, um, addiction problems and things like that. I mean, we have a relationship, but it was tough,
Yeah.
in that respect. But my mom is also, mom's like just a strong woman, a great inspiration to me, and I didn't really feel the lack as much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I have always been a sucker for an adventure. We met at
Mm.
Burning Man, right? I went by myself. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to see the world. And because I didn't come from much, I wasn't doing the backpacking gap year trip where you had, funds to just go and go to Europe and travel around. And I was also studying international affairs, right? And then majored in Spanish. And so, and then I heard there's an island with like Black Hispanic people too. Like that was cool to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, and also it's not so far away that it feels like I'm
Mm.
unreachable, right? And so it just ended up being a really great opportunity. Then I got there and I was like, do y'all curse on this podcast?
We can.
Damn. This this is tough.
Yeah.
And when you go into Peace Corps, they give you a this little graph that to kind of prepare you for what you're about to go through. And so, you've got like the excitement coming this way, and then it drops down when you first get
Uh-huh.
into your community and all your friends and the other volunteers leave and you're out there and you don't know the language and you don't have a toilet
Are
and
are
you're
you there by
washing your clothes in
yourself?
the river. Yes,
By yourself, so you don't even
by
have
yourself.
other wow, okay.
No. The closest volunteer. Now, this isn't the situation for every volunteer. Some people are hours away from each other, but
Mhm.
my best friend now, like my best friend, um, she was maybe 30 minutes away. But we had a
Okay.
concho there, like we had to ride a motorcycle to get there. The roads weren't great, that kind of thing. So I had my moment. Like I got pretty depressed out there, and
Mhm.
they were gonna send me home because I wasn't really eating a lot. I just wasn't motivated. I was sad. I came with a boyfriend, and that wasn't working out because of the distance, type of
Mm.
thing.
Mhm.
He's now my husband, so it did eventually work out. But
Okay.
but it was tough, right?
Yeah.
And then when they said, "We're gonna send you home if you don't start, like, gaining weight," like, your doña, that your host mom is saying you're not, like you're just really sad and she doesn't know what to do. And then something in me was just
Are you staying with a family, and is that when you say your host mom, are you living with her
in the beginning. So
in the
you
beginning?
you get, like, a month of training, and then they send you to live with your host family, and that's another transition. I don't remember exactly how long it is because 'cause it's been a while, but, maybe a month or 2, and then you
Mhm.
get your own apartment or your own space if you want to. Um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so during the time I was living there in the host family, they were doing everything they could. And I still keep in touch now, and it was a beautiful experience. But those first few weeks where everybody's gone and you're just really trying to figure out what did they say,
Mhm.
like, you know,
And
the Spanish
Dominicans
and
speak
Dominican
they speak so fast. So even if you've
and in the
been learning
Campo.
Spanish, yeah, they got their accents. Yeah, so it's a whole different it's not what they're teaching you in school.
Mm-mm. All that university training, mm-mm. Nope. It was like a foreign language all over again. It was tough, right? But then after a while, and especially when they said, "Look, we can't have you out here disappearing. You gotta get it together." Something in me switched, and I was like, "I gotta get it together."
Okay.
So, I started to accept what was going on, to lean into the discomfort, to spend time, drinking coffee in everybody's house, like really embracing community. And eventually that graph started to track up again. And to the point
Mhm.
where when you have to leave, you're not ready to go because you feel so embedded and you're so close
Mm.
to the people that have become your family, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it was definitely tough when
Yeah.
yeah.
And when you're in a situation like this, like when you pull up to these small villages, small towns in DR, it's like everybody knows everything. So you must have been like a beacon. Like everyone knew you were La Gringa or whatever they were calling
That's
you.
exactly it. That's exactly right. I wasn't a gringa, but a
Uh,
different kind of gringa because I wasn't
yeah,
white.
yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. What was
So
that like for them?
it was they thought an American was coming to the campo,
Yeah.
and they were like, "What's this tall ass black chick? Like, what is this?" Like, it was
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
strange. And it was strange for
Yeah.
me too because when I would walk around with the volunteers, like if we got together, I was always the tour guide, like the Dominican tour guide.
Uh-huh.
But then I couldn't speak great Spanish. I had, an accent or whatever, and they were just completely confused by me. So, but towards the end, when like the language got really a lot better and I had, my swag, like it was great because then I wasn't a target because a lot of the
Uh-huh.
other volunteers were targeted for various reasons. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then I could kind of get under the radar, and that experience was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. So I just realized so you come back, you're in public health, and how did you end up in design?
Oh man. So Remember I told you that I started designing jewelry in Peace Corps? I started using materials from the environment. So I worked with a lot of youth, and they needed money. So I was like, I'm going to teach them a little bit about jewelry making. I had done some beadwork at home. My mom was sending me beads from United States because she knew I was depressed, and she was like, I know she needs something to do with her hands, right?
Yeah.
Like some
Yeah.
some craft or something. And so they saw me making crafts, and then we started making crafts together. Then we started using seeds and different things from the environment to make these. And eventually, the youth started selling their own jewelry to make money. So it was sort of an entrepreneurship club type
Oh, I
thing that
love
we
that.
developed. And, I also like painted my little shack. Like I could show you pictures. Like I painted the walls. They were wooden and they're, over the place. But like I made my little space my home when I got there. And I've always been that way. Like from when high school, like painting my room orange and like gluing things all over the place and hanging things from the ceiling. Like it's just always
Mhm.
been me in me. Um, but when I got back, I wanted a way um to continue with my artistic journey, but like get paid for it. And I read an article about staging saying like this is all the rage in
Mm.
terms of the real estate market, and it would teach me the principles of design, but I get to do it over and over again at a rapid pace so I could learn faster that way.
Mhm.
Because you design the space, and then if it sells in 2 days, you have to go destage and put it in another house. And then you've got a new canvas to work on, and how am I gonna make sure the scale is right, and also it's very fast, so you do it in 1 day. So it's
Mm.
really stressful, but it's a great education for design. So I started as an intern, free, just like I just wanna learn the trade, and eventually I was a lead
While you
stager.
were working your full-time job type of
Yep.
thing, you were
Mhm.
just
On the
okay.
weekends, I would be hustling,
Pay attention,
designing.
kids.
Mhm. You
Pay
you've
attention.
gotta you're gonna get uncomfortable. You're gonna be tired, it's gonna be uncomfortable, you're gonna have to push yourself, um, to grow. You know what I mean? If you don't come from a lot and have that sort of, foundation where you can take your time with these things, you just have to fit it in the ways that you can.
Yeah. So you
Um,
were how were you working evenings after as an intern, or is that how you did it? Because you had a 9 to 5, it sounds like.
I did. I worked on the
Okay.
weekends. So
On the weekends.
on the weekends, and then at some point, I'd even gone down to 50% time at my job and was
Mm.
balancing that with 50% staging because I had some flexibility on the way that my job worked at the time. We would do
Yeah.
projects for the government, and then, that
And
would end or whatever. And yeah.
when you do 50%, are you getting paid at that point, or are you still interning?
Oh, getting paid at that point. But like not
Okay.
that much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You're still earning your dues type of
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Okay, so how did you fully transition? What did that look like? And I'm pointing this out because I feel like, one of the fascinating things about your story and one of the reasons I want to talk to you is that you have these transitions in your life,
Mhm.
and you're someone who has an idea or something that inspires you, and then you go put it together. And I think a lot of people get caught up in just thinking about it and then being a victim to life, waiting for the right opportunity or the right opening. And you're demonstrating that you're willing to take these big leaps and be uncomfortable and get messy and you lose money and do these things to in order to build what you want. And I think it's a really important lesson for people who are listening, so that's why I wanted to talk about this.
That's a great point. It's amazing. Um, I think about this a lot. This concept of like, what's the difference between some people say, oh, you've done a lot in life. You've done a lot of cool, interesting things. And like, the only difference between me and that person is that one moment where you decide to take a step forward. And it's as
Hmm.
simple as that. It's like I didn't know what I was Peace Corps, that was a risk, right? A lot of people
Hmm.
were saying, "You just went to this great college. You graduated," especially people of color. We're like, "Go make money."
Yeah, yeah,
Like, you're
yeah,
not gonna go
yeah,
volunteer. That's something that,
yeah,
like, you don't do. Go work for, one of the big 5 or, like, make money, right?
yeah, yeah.
And, first of all, my mom was very supportive, right? Because she could have said, no, go make money. Um, but also, I just, I guess I intrinsically knew there was more, and my
Mm-hmm.
desire and curiosity would take, center stage for me. Um, and I do have perfectionistic tendencies, but they don't prevent me from moving forward. But I know
Mm-hmm.
people who are so intelligent, so smart, have so many amazing ideas. And the one thing that holds them back from it is they have to have everything in place and they
Mm.
have to feel 100% confident
Mm,
and
mm, mm,
comfortable
mm.
to move forward. And I keep saying, that's how you know you should, when you have that nervousness, that nervous energy, and you don't know, that's how you know you're ready. Um, and so, and that comes along at different stages for different people. And there are people who are world changers who are,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call it complacent, but they just can't, it's too much,
Yeah.
the step is too much
What
that it takes.
when you make a decision,
Mhm.
is it like is it a quick process for you? Is it you go with it and you move, or is it like something that you give it thought and you think about it? And then second part to that question, once you make the decision, do you like question it or are you like all in?
I question it. I think so there's so many different personality types, right? I think for me, I am a bit impulsive in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that when I like something, I'm diving 100% all in. I'm learning
Okay.
everything about it. Like I'm obsessed about it. Like I tell my friends, "Hey, look at this." I'm sending links. I'm studying at nighttime. Like I'm getting fully immersed in it because the interest moves me that way.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people would say pick one thing and get really good at it. And I've wrestled with that my entire life, and my friends and I have had conversations about that. But I think there's so many different types of people in the world and we need all of them. And for me, it's like once I'm interested, I'm going for it. Like that curiosity drives me to move forward. And it's like I know that universe, God will bring people into my path to illuminate the way and that it'll fall away when it's time to fall away. So not
Mm-hmm.
every interest that I've ever had that I've pursued has come to fruition or become anything. And that for me is actually part of the journey. That's the glorious
Yeah.
part about it, right? Like many failures, many like, oh, I'm interested here and then it fizzles out and it's just not for you.
Yeah.
But following that sort of meandering path, who would have thought that working in a health clinic, as a case manager and home staging would come together to create something that transforms people's lives.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I
Are
mean?
you a person of faith?
I am absolutely.
Yeah. Because
Yes.
this is where I think faith like also really comes in, right? Because if you in the sense of believing in something bigger and a higher purpose, like it's all preparing you, and sometimes we're so resistant to the struggle.
Mhm.
And I think even now, especially where, our society, I'm talking about the US, is in this very place where we don't like to hear opposing views. We don't like to feel discomfort. We cancel people really quickly. There's a way that there's just and even in the spirituality movement, where people are seemingly diving into self development, but then they're like creating boundaries, right? And like, but really when you're creating a boundary at the end of the day, you're trying to avoid feeling a discomfort or feeling triggered or feeling,
Mhm.
so I'm generalizing, don't come for me, internet. But my point is that I do think that there is a way that generally we are in patterns of trying to avoid failure, avoid discomfort, avoid pain, avoid, and but all of that prepares you. All of that is part of it. All of those failures is what has you grow. Like in my morning prayers, like I've started to do this year where I'm just like, thank you for the struggle. Thank you for all the
Yes.
challenges that you've placed in front of me because I know that they're preparing me for the next thing. I know they're helping me become a better coach. I know they're preparing me for the next blessing that you're putting in my path. And I don't think that people embrace the struggle enough. I don't think that people embrace the hard stuff enough and really ask themselves, what is this here to teach me? Right? What am I meant to learn from from this moment? And instead we just like, you know. Um I mean, you were even doing this. We were having a conversation before we started about your experience at Burning Man, and Burning Man. That's one of the things about Burning Man that's amazing. It's like it's such a challenging experience. Like, it's magical, it's beautiful, but there is no way that you can be in the middle of the desert for a week and just not have to struggle a lot. Just getting there itself is an incredible challenge. And so we were discussing some of the challenges that we had, some of the experiences, and you were just like, yeah, that was a lesson for me that I came home and reflected. And there was a way that you brought that struggle with you to integrate into life and learning, right? So I think that's one of your superpowers too.
I was thinking about when you were giving the talk, right? You had a talk one at your session at Burning Man in
Yeah,
camp,
I did a
right?
workshop
You
at
did a
our camp.
workshop,
Yeah.
amazing workshop, right? And I
Thank
love
you.
to see, like, I had been working with you, on committees and things like that, but I never saw you in your bag, so to speak. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
is what you do, and I was just like, wow. It was amazing to witness.
Thank you.
Um, I really enjoy seeing people in sort of their, what do they call it, zone of genius. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but I told you that story about, that moment that I was frustrated and sad, and how it led to something amazing. I don't know if it's okay for me to tell that story
Yeah,
now to
yeah,
your
yeah,
listeners.
yeah. You
Yeah, I feel
totally
like it's
should.
a good intro, yeah, to that story. Um, so you were talking about struggle, right? And it not coming with struggle, anytime you're taking on something new and you're doing something that's you've never done before. And even with Oasis, with the organization that we've just, been talking about for a bit, there are still moments that are a struggle. There are still new lessons to learn, even when you've stepped into your purpose.
Yeah.
And we do different projects, and each comes with its own set of challenges. We just finished a healthcare clinic. That was a different challenge, right? Because it's a different space. The staff need different things. The patients need different things. And so you've got to kind of reset everything and take that learner's mindset again. And so but in this particular instance, I was just tired. I was coming home from my regular 9 to 5 job, and I had picked up a dresser for one of the clients we were going to help over the weekend. And I had the dresser on like a dolly and was putting it into the storage unit. And if you can envision, like, it's later at night, this woman has her heels on and she's trying to, get this dresser into a storage unit and load it up. And it's like, why am I doing this? I don't have to. I could stay in the comfort zone. I could just work my regular job and be a mom and a wife and call it a day, but I'm still trying to push for this purpose because that's what has, been given to me. This is it. But I was complaining, in my head. And after I put the dresser in the storage unit, I was sitting in my car getting ready to go home. That's a whole other set of responsibilities, make dinner, get everybody, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it's kind of like you need to pause and take a breath. And I was like practicing gratitude, from, probably hearing a podcast like yours, Gary, like, let's try to transmute this energy to something positive. And so I was like, what are you grateful for? And I was sitting in my car and I looked at the steering wheel, and I have, my vehicle was basically big enough to carry all of the things that I needed for my clients. You could fit a mattress, you could fit the dressers in there, all the donations we would receive. I could just fit everything in there. It was crazy. People were like, it's not going to fit. I'm like, it will fit. My car is like magic. It's my chariot, right? To do this work. And so I had a Santa Fe, right? And so I was like, I'm grateful for my car because it works and it gets the job done. I don't have to rent a U-Haul every time I need to pick up furniture. And then I thought, and this was not my thought. This was God's thought. This was like the universe speaking to me because I followed the gratitude process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that transmutation ended up being opening up a whole universe of opportunity. But I was told to write down right then, right there on my cell phone, write an email, um, and thank the company for this vehicle. Like to explain
Mm.
that I'm using my Santa Fe to deliver to the community, and it always has enough space for everything I need. But not wait. Don't wait and do it or say I'll do it another day. Right here in your car, in the driver's seat, type out this email. Next day, the the PR team and the CEO of Hyundai have seen this email. It's been passed around the leadership team, and they write me back. I'm actually in the bed with my husband, and I'm like, oh my God, they got the email. Like, that's crazy because you think, that
Yeah, you
nobody
think it's
gets
gonna
those
be
emails,
nobody
right,
gets
Gary?
those.
Nobody
Exactly,
gets those.
exactly.
But I'm just following, like, follow what the Spirit tells you. And I was like, that's crazy. And they were like, maybe we can work with you someday. And then, long story short, because we don't have 2 hours to talk about this, at the end of the day, through COVID, maintain that relationship, budget cuts and having money again. At the end of the day, one of the most prolific photographers that ever existed, Annie Leibovitz, did a commercial featuring Oasis Alliance. She took us around, took pictures of us all day. Her crew was there. We took photos, we took video, and Hyundai had a commercial about the Oasis Alliance, which is a group of volunteers, not even full time, that are doing work in the community in Virginia. Like, elevated our platform 1,000%.
Yeah,
And we were able to get more funding, meet more people, um, and also tell this story to inspire your listeners, to inspire other people, that a moment of gratitude when you're feeling that trepidation can
yeah,
transform your life in ways that you don't even realize.
yeah.
So, it's an amazing journey. And it's more
It's
amazing when you take that step to do something that you're scared to do.
yeah. And something I also want to highlight, it's something that you also seem to be good at is trusting your downloads.
Mhm.
I believe I said this on the show. I believe that we're being spoken to at all times. We are, but we go, oh no, oh that's just a thought. Oh, I'll do it later. Oh no, that's not for me. Oh, I'm crazy, and we just dismiss, push away, aside, and we're literally being guided, spoken to at all times. And the challenge is to trust it, right? And to really honor it. And when you don't, like, it gets louder and it gets louder and it gets louder, and eventually it'll come and kick that door down, or it'll show up in, like, some nasty way in your life, like, a sickness, or because you're not listening to that inner intuition. So it's also, you're just a really great demonstration of that as well. You know.
Thanks, Gary. It takes
Yeah.
practice. It
Oh,
definitely takes
100%.
practice. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Um so as I want to, as we start to kind of come to the end, I want to talk about your transition and starting this. So you get this idea, and for this nonprofit, and then what happened? Because I think a lot of people have ideas like that, and then they're like, what? So if you can kind of talk to us a little bit about your journey and getting it started, and it's a work in progress, right? Like, you're still
That's
working
Yep.
as a designer, you're navigating both responsibilities.
Mhm.
Um, so again, demonstrating that you're willing to hustle to have your dream. Yeah,
So, another moment of raising my hand, right? And we've been talking about raising your hand moments, or saying, or stepping into something. Um, at my place of worship, we do a lot of um, community service, or community engagement. And at the time, I was on that team, and we would, like, go to soup kitchens or do that kind of thing, and that's fine. But there was this one request that came in for a mom and daughter who were coming out of the shelter, and domestic violence survivors, and they were getting their first apartment. and didn't have furniture, and could someone go to the church storage unit and take out furniture that's been donated to kind of put the package together, right? Create a
Mhm.
space for them. And I'm like, this is because I'd been doing the home staging and all of that, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Ooh, I could do home staging, but for, like, somebody who's been through something." And I was
Yeah.
like, "I'll do it." And so we ended up going through so many, this church had so many donations over time and this shipping container in the back, and so we had to do a lot of cleaning out of it to find good things, but got a team of volunteers. We did it like a staging where we dropped in a day and designed the space for them, and they went and had dinner and hung out, mom and daughter, and then came back in the evening. But one thing that was really important to me was speaking to them first, so not just bringing over
Mm.
furniture, but like going to the shelter and interviewing them. What is your story? Where have you been? Where do you want to go? What do you love to do? What makes you feel happy inside? What are your hobbies? Just getting to know them. And so I did some extra shopping to make sure that those details weren't forgotten in the design,
Mm.
which is different than home staging, right? It's another layer of personalization that
Yeah.
really makes someone feel that this is home and not just
Yeah.
an Airbnb
What
or or a
what
place.
yeah. What
Sorry, go
made you
ahead.
do that? Cuz I can you know, you could have done it. You could have done this without doing that.
On my experience at the clinic that I told you about in the beginning, my experience
Yeah.
of how to create a place of value where someone's reflected. The experience
Yeah.
of dealing with domestic violence survivors that came into the clinic for mental health care and needed services to get away from an abusive person in their lives, and then realizing how important those stories were. So I was doing those interviews when I came back from Peace Corps, and I just transferred that skill to something different.
Mhm.
There's so many
Mhm.
skills that translate that people don't even realize because they're siloed in like different experiences in their lives that can cross over and create sort of exponential growth, right? Or are just creative, like connecting the dots in different ways. So I said, let me go interview this family first before I create a space for them, right?
Mhm.
And the transformative moment when they came in and saw their space, it wasn't the
Mhm.
beauty of the overall impression, it was the details that they gravitated to.
Mhm.
"Oh, I told you I like this cartoon character. Wow, she's on my bedspread." Or, "I have a space where I can bake. I told you that's my safe place. And you bought me all the tools to bake and a baking set." Things like that that made the difference. And
Yeah.
so that when I finished that project, which was the first ever real Oasis project in my book,
Mhm.
I walked outside, I cried, and I felt like my heart was on fire. Like, I don't know how to explain it any other way. And I was like, "This is it."
Mm.
And that was the beginning. And so then, of course, after you do a few of those, then you're like, maybe I should make a nonprofit. Maybe I should go for 501(c)(3) status. Maybe I should bring in my designer friends who also want to serve, but don't know how, right? And so at this point, we've created over 90 spaces. Um, we have done a domestic violence shelter. We've done a reentry facility for women coming out of prison. We have done a food distribution center for people who during COVID had no food, but created a space where they weren't just getting a trash bag with food in it, but it was like a grocery experience so they could shop in a dignified way, even though it
Yeah.
was free food. And then just lastly, last week we had our grand opening of the clinic, so first healthcare facility. And we're all doing this all volunteer, nobody gets paid, and it's all outside of our regular jobs. So you wanna talk about, like, sacrifice, and not to mention the sacrifice that my family, my husband and
Mhm.
my kids have had to suffer through for the sake of the cause, right?
Yeah.
It's not just me alone in this, I'm not an island, like, I have people who support me, who lift me up when I'm tired, and who push me forward, and so it's a community effort. But, um but yeah, that is the story of how it came to be and how it continues to move forward.
Wow. How how are you getting your funding? How are you getting your support? Like what's that process like?
Yeah. So part of our growth and strategic plan was to get a board that knows how to fundraise, right?
Mm.
We were a working board for a long time, and that's cute until you want to scale and do bigger and better things for the community,
Yeah.
and you have limited resources. So, our first step was to recruit a board that knows people and has networks. So they do a lot of the fundraising. It's mostly individual donations. We do have a few grants that we get from family foundations, but we're at a place where we're small, so small that for certain grants, you need to have at least a couple $1 million in revenue to even
Mm.
qualify for the grant.
Mm.
So it's like, in the social safety net, there's people who kind of slip in the middle. Like they don't make too little, but they don't make enough type thing. That's
Yeah.
sort of where we're at. And also, what I've realized is that what we're doing, mental health through design, interior design, is a very niche
Mm-hmm.
area. And a
Yeah.
lot of people see it as a luxury. Like I see the space behind you. I know you
Yeah.
know design, like you've got it, right? Like we've worked together in that sense and you know how to make something look beautiful. But some people are like that's not important. They just need a bed, a dresser, make sure they have food to eat. Why are we putting money into this? We'd rather buy them cans of soup that makes us feel good. It's a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, and we're also focusing on families one at a time. So we don't have a lot of, you know, we're not, we don't have 2,000 widgets that we're not giving out 2,000 bowls of soup. So we
Yeah.
don't have like the numbers sometimes that a lot of
Yeah.
larger organizations want to say, we've helped 5,000 people, but not just like three families solidly.
Yeah.
So those are the types of challenges we come up against. But as we go move on in the journey, we meet people who understand, and they're the people who support us.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, it's funny because the moment that you started sharing about this, I realized the first thing I realized was that I was one of those people that would have just said, "Let's get them furnished. Let's get stuff in there, and then let's move on." And the fact that you take the time to hear the stories, to hear what matters to them, to give them an experience of them being seen, immediately I started to go, that has to have a huge impact on them. It has to be such a profound experience for them to be seen in that way and to be acted on it, right? To be executed. Like the things that matter to me, you're executing on and you're making an effort to deliver on. And I think for a lot of these people, that's probably the first time that that's ever happened. Um, have you studied or done any follow up to kind of, I don't know how you would do this, but it would be really fascinating to track some of the progress because it has to have a profound impact on their lives in some
yeah,
way. Like it has to.
that has been a huge challenge, and but also still something we really, really want to figure out. A puzzle we want to complete, and we measuring those types of effects can be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Um, like we ask questions now in the beginning, in the first interview we have with a person or a family, and have people rate themselves. How do you, how prepared are you to move forward in life? How, happiness levels, your joy levels, how, um, how creative do you feel? Like we have a whole inventory of questions we ask, and then, 6 to 8 weeks after they've moved into their space, we ask them again. The people that we work with sometimes have a more transient lifestyle, right? They may be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
less stable than others. And so there are questions that we ask them up front to make sure, first of all, we're not designing this amazing space and then, in 6 months, you're going to move out
You're
to a
gonna
new
be gone.
space,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So we figured out along the way what our ideal client is, somebody who is going to be stable. You have a home, have a job, you plan on being here, you've signed a lease for a year or two, that kind of thing. But also, we have realized what our scope is and what we can and can't do. And so we we realize that we're giving a start, but we also have to connect those individuals into the community to other services to work on the mental health issues that are not going to
Mm-hmm.
be resolved with
Mm-hmm.
the design, to
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
on making sure you have access to food and, perhaps career counseling or mental health services. So we've started to like say, "Oh, we did this, but we know they need that to keep moving forward." And instead of trying to do all the things we're comfortable with, we're creating a safe home base for them where they feel loved and cared for,
Yeah.
and creating the connections to the community for the other things that they need, right?
Yeah.
And I think that through the years, we've seen so many different reactions. We've had people come into their space and just literally turn around and walk out. And we have to like go get them off the outside of the apartment. They're crying. They're like, I don't deserve this. Right? Like we have people fall out on the floor. Like just we've had people who just are speechless and can't even say anything and then call us the next day and say, "Do you want money for this? Are you sure this is free?" Like so many different, and those reactions reflect the trauma they've been through, right? Like
Yeah.
nothing's in life
Yeah.
is for free. I
Yeah.
can't be receiving this gift for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I've never had a space this nice growing up. Like I don't really know how to
Yeah.
keep this up. There's so many
Yeah.
emotional things that happen that we know it's really hitting in certain places and it's pulling things up for people. But the thing it pulls up most is like just care and love. Like somebody listened to me. Like she heard that I said I like this color and she put this
Yeah.
pattern, you know? And so we do all different types of things to reflect that. We bring plants into spaces, we do smells, like we try to touch all the senses.
Mm.
So it's become a lot more like it's trauma informed, but it's also therapeutic. Like we recognize the power that plants have, the power that certain smells and colors have. So now there's a whole thing, right? We've like built this whole
Yeah.
system for how we do things, but with always with that person at the center. So
Yeah. I think I just saw a book. Have you thought about that?
yeah, we don't
I
talk a lot
just
about it, but we have thought about it.
I just saw a book where you're explaining these theories and working. I think there's something really powerful here. And something that's untapped. It's like you can't expect somebody to build their life, to change, to do this really difficult work of unpacking the stuff that life has put in front of them when you don't feel good at home, when you don't feel safe at home, when you don't feel, and I mean, I know for myself, like, I know what it's like to walk into a space that I've curated that makes me feel like, oh, and I know what it's like to walk into a space when I'm like, I don't feel, like
Right? We
it
know that.
has, it impacts my mental state, it impacts my mental state and my ability to produce and my ability to be calm. So magnify that times 100 with more intense situations, and it has to have an impact. Um,
COVID, Gary, like so many people were stuck in their the design industry did not suffer during COVID. Like
yeah, no, they're
they like
suffering
it went
now a little
up
bit. Yeah,
because people were like, I need this space to be comforting
yeah,
to me.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's just a clear sort
It
of
makes
example of
total
that.
sense.
hmm
Well, my love, I could talk to you forever.
I know. We just
Um,
got started, it feels like.
thank you so much. I just love the work that you're doing. How can people get connected, make a donation, support the Oasis Alliance?
My gosh. So if you just put our name into Google, you'll find lots of different media, um, lots of different articles and things that have come out on our work. But if you really want to get connected, you can go to our website or Instagram. That's where we're most active on Instagram. Our website is www.theoasisalliance.org. And up top you can click volunteer. There's different ways you can volunteer. You can, if you're interested in a leadership position in design and you're moved by the mission, you could apply to be a board member. You could contribute by connecting us to brands that want to donate,
Mm,
nice things, right? So a lot of what we do, we don't take a lot of donations because of the story I shared. We prefer to use new things for people. And so we want to create brand partnerships so that when we need decor, we can go to Target and grab the things we need, or that kind of thing has been really good for us. So we have a few sponsorships, but those types of connections, even if you can't donate money or time, just connecting us to someone that could contribute in that way, that pays off in, tenfold. Um, you could write about our work. You could have us on a podcast like you, Gary, just to
hmm.
amplify the work that we're doing and get the word out that this is happening and that it's really important. So there's just so many ways that you could help. But the first step would be probably going to our website, I would say.
Beautiful. I
Yeah.
will make sure that I include the link to that
Sure.
in the show notes. Danielle, thank you so much for your time. It was a
Gary,
pleasure.
thank you for your platform. I enjoyed it so much, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I feel like I can do another whole episode unpacking all of the lessons that we can learn from Danielle's life. The willingness to take big, bold risks. The willingness and discipline to be in the struggle while you're building towards something. The patience and heart to show everyone dignity, even when it's not required or expected. I can go on and on, really. But I think what I really want to focus on for this conclusion is Danielle's willingness to go on and trust the journey. If you see in life, we typically try to follow these very linear paths. We go to college, then a master's, then we get the job at the right company, then we promote, then we get into management, so on and so forth. You see where I'm going here, right? But life isn't always like that. There are ups and downs and turns, and there's a whole lot of pivots. Mostly, we resist the ups and downs. We throw tantrums when there are setbacks. We complain when it doesn't go how we expected it. We beat ourselves up when we don't measure up to our expectations or the expectations of others. But, as Danielle shows us, it's all part of the master plan. Each experience, each pivot, is all preparing you for what you have been called to do. Each experience building on the next and building on the next, until you're ready to understand how all the pieces come together. And only then can you really take full responsibility of the vision. But this requires trust, and it requires you to keep leaning in and looking for the next clue that gets placed in front of you. And when you see it, when you get that pull, trust it. Trust it and go for it. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please share it. Let's do whatever we can to get the word out and support this amazing work that Danielle and her team of volunteers are doing at the Oasis Alliance. I think this work they're doing is really special in treating so many people with dignity when they are at their most vulnerable. So let's rally and see what we can do to support them. Okay? Thank you guys. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Ownership Game with your host, Gary Montalvo. Make sure to like and comment on your favorite podcast platform, as well as subscribe so that you never miss an episode.